Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those in attendance, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure, and planning department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representatives to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. All speakers at the podium, please remove your face mask before speaking into the microphone. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on all the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to the District Court.
Okay, if we could have roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Mr. Bill Johnson.
Present.
Fox.
Present.
Mr. McKay. Looks like he's absent. Mr. Green. Here. Mr. Dool.
Here.
Mr. Blick. Mr. Blick. Looks like he's absent. Mr. Nix.
Here.
Ms. Foster.
Here.
Mr. Warren.
Here.
Mr. Joe Johnson.
Here.
Ms. Miles is absent today. Mr. Hartman. He's here. Ms. Cunningham. She is online. We see her. And Mr. Williams Bay.
Here.
Very good. Looks like we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8, 11 members present.
Thank you. Now we're going to approve the minutes of the prior MAPC meeting of June 16th. And I show that Cindy Miles and Mr. Blick was not present. Second. Make a motion.
Joe Johnson.
Joe wasn't here?
Yeah, Joe made the motion.
Oh,
I made a motion.
okay, sorry. So I have a second.
Yes.
Motion approved by Joe Johnson, second by Mr. Green. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Is there anybody opposed? Okay, now we're going to go through the agenda and see what items we can take on consent. First is the subdivision committee recommendations, subdivision case 2022-00020. Is there anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual? Do you want to hear this case? Anybody in the commission chambers want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? 2-1 will take on consent. The next item is 2.2, subdivision 2022-00030. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners are virtual? Is there anybody in the commission chambers want to hear this case? Seeing none, anybody virtual want to hear this case? 2.2 we can take on consent.
I move approval of items 2.1 and 2.2.
Motion was made by Ms. Fox, second by Ms. Foster. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Next one will go to the public hearings, which is case 3.1, vacation 2022-00018. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners of virtual want to hear it? Anybody in the commission chambers want to hear it? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? Seeing none, we can take that on consent. 3.2, vacation 2022-00019. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners virtual want to hear it? Anybody in the commission chambers want to hear this case? Anybody virtual? We can take those.
I think we have people tuning in for this one. I'm sorry. I'm trying to read online. Is this the one on North Woodrow Court or North Woodrow Avenue?
No, this is a vacation item, vacation
I'm sorry.
2022-19. That's okay.
Move
Okay.
we approve items 3.1, 3.2.
Motion by Mr. Green, second by Mr. Nix. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, now the public hearings. First case is 2022-00018. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners virtual want to hear it? Anybody in the commission chambers, anybody want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? We can take that on consent. Next one's 2022-00019. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual?
Yes.
You want to hear it?
Yeah.
We will hear that case. Next one, 4.3, 2022-00020. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? Anybody virtual commissioners that want to hear this case? Anybody in the commission chambers want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? We'll take that on consent. Item 4.4, PUD 2022-00012. We're going to hear that case. Is that correct, Philip? The next one is 4.5, PUD 2022-00014. We need to hear that case, Philip. All right, 4.6, PUD 2022-00015. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual want to hear it? Anybody in the commission chambers want to hear it? Anybody virtual want to hear that case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? Take it on consent. Somebody want to hear it? We'll take it on consent. All right, 4.7, zoning case 2022-00015. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual want to hear it? Anybody in the commission chambers want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear it? We'll take that on consent. 4.8, zoning case 2022-00017. Anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual want to hear this case? Anybody in the commission chambers want to hear this case? Okay, we'll hear that case. 4.9, zoning case 2022-00029, conditional use 2022-00021. Does anybody on the commission want to hear this case?
I just have a question. I've got a question on it.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question.
Hey,
Hello.
I've got a couple of questions, I guess.
Okay.
One of them is under the recommendation, and I've seen this on other cases, where that for today, where it's approval of the request for the zone change and conditional use with the following recommendations, not requirements.
I've lost sound. Has anybody else?
It's on-
I can't hear anything.
Mine-
I can't hear anything.
He didn't have his
Yeah.
mic on.
Either, it says Paul's presenting, but I'm not hearing anything.
My microphone's on. Is it not coming through online?
Okay.
Can you hear me, Susie?
I am checking with the staff in the council chambers. This is Scott Wadle. I'm on remote. So I'll keep you posted.
Okay.
Well, test 1, 2. Scott, can you hear?
Yes, we can hear you.
I think we can hear each other. We just can't hear the presenter.
Can you hear me okay? Can anyone
Yes,
hear
you're
me?
coming through loud and clear.
Okay, great.
Okay, well, back to my original question here. It says approval of the request for the zone change and conditional use with the following recommendations, not requirements.
That's correct.
So all of these, 5, 6 items here are just recommendations
That is correct.
and no requirements. So they would not have to put sidewalk around the perimeter,
They're not required to, it's merely a recommendation.
and they would not have to lay out their site plan. So it's all just,
No, it's not required.
I guess that begs the question, why do we have the requirements if they're not, or the recommendations?
They're just suggested actions by staff based on our review, but based on our plans and policies and regulations in place, we can't require them, but they're just suggestions based on our review of how we feel the site could be better developed, or they're options for different boards to potentially put in as requirements, but from our perspective, we don't necessarily have things that require those things be put in place. That's why they're just put in there more as a recommendation, but not a requirement.
So at some point,
Alexa, shut up.
so at some point, there may be another governing body that would require these?
Not necessarily they're merely put in there to raise awareness of this could be an option of how to develop the site if the planning commission today, or maybe a district advisory board will want to choose to require them, that would be their consideration. But from a staff perspective, we did not want to put them as a condition of approval.
Okay.
Does anybody on the commission want to hear this case? How about the commissioners that are virtual? Do you want to hear the case? Now, this is not open to the public for a public hearing, correct?
4.9 is, yes, it's still a public hearing item.
Okay.
It's the DER item under number 5. That's a non-public hearing item.
So we need to take them separately?
No, this zone and conditional use, because it's one staff report, is one consideration. I would open it up to the floor. We have not determined if there's any public comment yet.
Anybody in the commission chambers want to hear this case? Anybody virtual want to hear this case? So we can take that on consent.
I move that we approve 4.1, 4.3, 4.6, and 4.7 per staff comments.
And 4.9.
And, I'm sorry, and 4.9.
Motion made by Ms. Foster, second by Mr. Warren. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Okay, the first one we'll hear is item 4.2, conditional use 2022-00019.
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioners. Philip Zievenbergen with the planning staff. For the record, Con 2219 is a conditional use request for an accessory apartment in single-family residential zoning. The property is located in North Riverside, north of 13th Street, just west of Garland, as you can see on the screen. The property, if you go to the aerial image, the property has an existing detached garage behind the single-family residence. The applicant is intending to use the second story of this detached garage for this accessory apartment. Within the Unified Zoning Code, there's supplemental use regulations that list 4 conditions that need to be met with accessory apartments. They're listed in your staff report. One of them that we will spend most of our discussion on this morning, Paul, can you go to the images of it? If you skip ahead to one of the pictures of the actual building, keep going. There we go. That's a good picture right there. So this is the existing detached garage. Condition number 3, the accessory apartment shall remain accessory to and under the same ownership. I apologize, it's actually number 2. The appearance of the accessory apartment will be compatible to the main dwelling unit within the character of the neighborhood. As you kind of saw through those flips of the pictures, there's a lot more red brick. The original structure none of the structures around this in the neighborhood really have the white stone. There are some properties with siding and things like that, but it's mostly the white stone that kind of brings into the question of whether or not this has a compatible appearance. 2 ways that this could be handled is whether or not it's in the opinion of the Planning Commission that this structure is compatible in character, or the applicant could request a waiver of this condition, which would require this case to go to City Council for final approval. Properties surrounding this are all zoned single-family residential with single-family homes with majority of brick facades. There's also a school and church who occupy land a couple blocks north. Overall, staff is recommending approval. Again, we have that question of whether or not there's a compatibility of the appearance of the structure. If it is not waived and it is not in the opinion of the Planning Commission that it is compatible, then the applicant would have to work on changing the appearance of it. It may just be worth moving forward with a waiver that would be approved by City Council, but that's up for the discussion today in the meeting. With that, I can stand for any questions.
Any questions, staff? Mr. Nix?
I noticed that the siding, there are houses with siding, but they're not houses with that wide modern siding. Most of them are the 4-inch antique clapboard siding. And it looks really good in the picture, but if you've driven past it, that brick really, or that rock really looks out of place. I just wondered if it was painted more to match the house. I wondered if the brick could be stained. It's a faux rock. It looks like a masonry, but it looks molded. And it dwarfs the house, really. It's not really compatible with the neighborhood, but I'm not that much against it if it were blended in a little bit better, maybe.
Mr. Nix?
Have we had anybody from the neighborhood? We're close, comment on this?
Yes, I received a phone call yesterday from, I don't remember, it's Claire Willenberg. If she is not the current president of the North Riverside Neighborhood Association, she is actively involved in the North Riverside Neighborhood Association. And her comment was kind of in the same vein of the white stone is the thing that generally stands out the most in terms of its appearance.
All right.
The sticking point with this is always when, there are no architectural requirements for an accessory structure to be built, so you build a garage, and it was not required. It's now all of a sudden when the apartment is going to be installed and the dwelling unit have to do the zoning approval to get through there, that these apply. So the structure existed before, now they're adding an apartment to it. Now there's issues with the possible compatibility of the architecture.
Well, will anyone know that there's an apartment up there?
I don't know if that's a question I can answer.
So did that garage get a permit and the rock was approved then? And
When accessory structures are built, even if it's just a detached garage and they go for a building permit for just a detached garage, there is no architectural review. The city of Wichita does not have architectural standards. And there's
Okay.
nothing governing North Riverside that would require architectural standards either.
okay.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I do see a property in the pictures. There are several properties that they don't have any brick, they don't have any stone facade, it's just siding with houses with dormers like this structure has. There's one here that's, looks like it's maybe red with some stone intermixed on it. It's looking south from the main residence. One of the pictures in our packet. I guess while it may not reflect the appearance of the accessory structure that is, or the main dwelling next to the accessory structure, I don't see how it really takes anything away from the character of the neighborhood. It's a nice facility, it's a nice structure. It's got dormers, it's got lap siding, it's got painted shingles, siding up above.
Let's hear this from the applicant.
Yeah, I just don't see any issues with it.
Is there any other questions by the commission or staff? Williams Bay.
It says the appearance of the accessory structure shall be compatible with the main dwelling unit and with the character of the neighborhood.
Right.
It's not compatible, I don't think, with the main dwelling unit.
It doesn't have brick.
Right.
Yeah. It's got dormers, got lap siding.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions of staff? If not, applicant or agent? Applicant or agent? Is the applicant or agent virtual? Okay.
I apologize. As always, they're notified of these meetings. I apologize that we did not follow up to ensure that they were here at this time.
Okay, I'm going to ask if there's anybody in the chamber here who wants to speak on this item. Anybody virtual want to speak on it?
Yes,
Give us your name and address, please.
Claire Willenberg, 1402 North Garland. And I am still currently president of North Riverside Association. We don't have, I don't believe, any problems with the accessory dwelling unit, except that it does not match the exterior qualities of the main structure. And it's mainly, as been mentioned, the white stonework that would be objectionable, we think. Thank you.
Is there anybody else virtual want to speak on this item? Since we don't have the applicant or the agent, I guess we'll bring it back to commission. What's the pleasure of the board?
Is your mic on?
Realistically, at this point, as a garage, it's permitted and it's allowed, and it would stay that way and be in the neighborhood with its white stone indefinitely if we don't allow the ADU. If we did allow the ADU, we either have to come to the conclusion that the white stone is in character, or I would assume we would have to require the owner to do something about that white stone, strip it off and put on brick, ideally. Is that?
There's a third option of recommending a waiver of that supplemental use regulation, which pushes this case to have final approval by city council.
Okay, so that's our third option, which basically boots the decision down the road, but that may not be a bad option. I guess I feel like, I think in general, I approve of the idea of an ADU in North Riverside. I think it's a better, more appropriate use of land. But I can't look at that and think that it's in character with the main structure and the neighborhood, which is what the requirements are. So perhaps we need to do the waiver to push it to the road to city council to make the decision, but I'd like to hear what other members of the board have to say.
Any other discussion?
I'm in agreement. If nothing changes, unless people know that someone's living up there, it's the same yesterday as it was tomorrow. So let's let a sleeping dog lie.
So I guess I will make, whoops, sorry.
So-
Go ahead, Mr. Green.
When you say let a sleeping dog lie, are you saying to have the city council approve it? Or so the city council will have to, yeah. Or
I make a motion, we approve it.
Yeah, Joe?
I made a motion, we approve it,
With a waiver or with,
like it is. Yeah.
with, I can't,
Joe, was that with a waiver?
he said like it is,
That's
I'm not
what-
sure what that means.
and,
I don't think it needs to go to the city council.
yeah, so
Well, we're
yeah,
still discussing
yeah,
the motion though.
we do have a choice, by saying that we approve it and that it meets the character of the neighborhood.
Just Mr.
This
Newell,
may
go
be
ahead.
a question for staff. Is it within our purview to make decisions on the architectural design of these applications, or does that come in when they get a building permit?
Well, again, this is a unique situation in that the garage was constructed when there's no architectural review in the building permit process. If it were a situation where they were intending to build an apartment at the very beginning, they came in and did the conditional use first, and then they go to get a building permit, then there'd be an architectural review by the planning department prior to the issuance of a building permit.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, J.R. Cox, Metropolitan Planning. Another option you have especially in light of the fact that the applicant was not here, is to defer this until the next meeting.
Okay, what's the pleasure of the commission?
If I
We
understand,
have a
Mr.
motion, but we don't have a second.
Yeah, if I understand Mr. Johnson's motion, it is to approve and concur that it is in character. And I would second that motion.
Okay, motion by
As long as the trees
Joe
are there.
Johnson, second by Mr. Warren, to say that it's okay if it's in the neighborhood. Any discussion?
I didn't get there to see this building, but the caps on the brick pillars and the surround of the front door, are those also white stone? Because that's kind of how I saw compatibility, that it,
It
I mean-
appears that they're at least in kind in terms of texture and color with the stone
with the
veneer.
facade, yeah. So that, and recognizing that the owner didn't have to comply
I
with
drove
standards.
past it. I drove past it several times, and it's, you know, a beautiful building, and I don't have a problem with it, except when you do go by, the blue-gray is really in contrast to the red brick. Maybe it would be more compatible with the house itself if that were just simply changed in color, but we don't have the owner agent to talk to, so we don't know how reasonable that is.
We do have a motion and a second. All in favor of the motion, say aye. Let's do a roll call.
Yes, sir. Mr. Bill Johnson.
Yes.
Ms. Fox.
Yes.
Mr. Green.
Aye.
Mr. Dool.
Yes.
Mr. Nix.
Yes.
Ms. Foster.
No?
Mr. Warren.
Yes?
Mr. Joe Johnson.
Yes.
Mr. Hartman. He's a yes. Ms. Cunningham.
Yes.
Mr. Williams Bay.
No.
It passes 9-2.
So it does pass. So now the next one we're gonna take is 4.4, PUD 2022-00012.
Again, good afternoon. Philip Zievenbergen for the record. PUD 2212 is a zone change request located on the east side of North Millwood, north of West Douglas, between Douglas and the Kansas-Oklahoma Railroad track, as you can see on the screen. The property is currently zone limited industrial. The planned unit development would create a custom zoning for microbrewery, retail restaurants, and other uses permitted in the central business district. The applicant is Central Standard Brewing, which if you're familiar with them or not, they are a Wichita-based microbrewery with an established location at 156 South Greenwood, kind of on the east side and the outskirts of downtown. The intent is to expand their business model and open a second location on North Millwood, with this new location being their primary production location. Their existing location would still operate as it is now. This would be an additional location for them. The PUD would permit what they define as a marketplace, which includes additional tenants with either retail or restaurant-based dining options. They'd also provide the opportunity for outdoor entertainment such as games and entertainment and things like that. The base of the planned unit development would allow development standards consistent with the central business district zoning classification. Specifically, the zoning classification is unique in that it has 0 setback requirements, which several of these buildings were built to the property line anyway, so it would actually bring them into conformance with the zoning code. In addition, the central business district does not require any off-street parking requirement. The applicant can provide additional off-street parking if they choose, but it would just not be required by this PUD. Furthermore, this PUD would permit entertainment when there is the service of alcohol, as our zoning code defines that. That is considered a nightclub in the city. Whether you consider it a true nightclub or not, that's a value judgment. The Staff recommended PUD language would restrict the entertainment portion of this to the east side of the property. In conversation with the applicant, they would like to amend. They're okay with that. What they want to do is have it follow the curvilinear path to where your dividing line isn't necessarily a straight line. It follows the curvilinear path of the railroad track boundary on the east side of the property. Regarding screening and the PUD permits the marketplace to operate until 10 p.m. Sunday through Thursday and until midnight on Friday night and Saturday. That includes the entertainment portion of that PUD language. In addition, staff recommends additional language to the PUD text to say that it has to comply with the Wichita noise ordinance. Regarding screening and landscaping, the PUD requires adherence to the standards found in Section 4 of the zoning code regarding screening between non-residential uses and residential uses. This really only applies to the very north portion of the site, where it's right across the street from SF5 and TF3 zoning. Something unique about this property is directly across Millwood to the west, you have properties zoned general commercial and limited industrial, and a good number of those are actually homes. There is one commercial structure kind of sandwiched in the middle. So you have very intense commercial zoning, but developed as single-family homes across from non-restricted limited industrial zoning. It's carryover from when Delano was a much heavier intensive location, but this is actually a little bit of a cleanup in the area. The staff recommended language of the PUD would permit existing vegetation on the site, which if you go to the aerial, Paul, you can see on the eastern portion of the site, there's a significant amount of trees, and as well as along the north side, along the boundary of the railroad track. In addition, to allow portable landscaping such as landscape planters to be used to provide landscaping along the western portion as opposed to a landscape street yard, with the understanding that a good number of this is already either developed with concrete or buildings up along the front. You can still provide landscaping more in planters versus actually physically digging up the earth and planting it into the ground. Staff also recommends adding language to the PUD that it adhere to the Delano neighborhood design guidelines. It is in the Delano neighborhood overlay. This would require that if a parking lot is provided on site, it's not required, but if a parking lot is required on site, there's specific standards for how parking lots are screened and what that screening would look like. In addition, regarding the architectural controls, it would have regulations regarding any modifications to the exterior of the buildings, or if there's any new buildings that would be built, that they would be in character with the Delano neighborhood. Properties surrounding this, as you can see on this aerial, a good number of them are residential. As we talked about, there's a mix of commercial and residential zoning on the west side of Millwood. If you go north of the railroad tracks, there's MF18 directly north, as well as single family north of that. Most of it is single family residential. To the east is to the south is zone general commercial, and it's a ballet studio and a storage facility. And the limited industrial zone property to the east is undeveloped except for kind of a parking lot. It looks like it's a vehicle storage yard as well. Regarding public services, North Millwood is a local street. It is paved with sidewalks on both sides. Municipal water and sewer services are available. Wichita Transit does provide bus service along Douglas. Something unique about Douglas is it does have service by the Q line, which is the free, it's not necessarily on a trolley anymore, but a free trolley service that operates in the weeknights as on Saturday. It does not extend all the way to Millwood. It's only about a half mile away. It turns around over at Douglas and Seneca. Of course, this could also spark conversation with Wichita Transit on whether or not extension of the Q line would be possible, but that's a decision for them to make. Something that could also be into consideration, and I believe the applicant would be willing to pursue this, is working with Public Works and Utilities to allow them to have angled parking in the right-of-way versus just using parallel parking along the curb. That would actually provide more on-street parking along the east side of Millwood. It's not part of the recommendation in here, but that was a conversation that we have had with the applicant. If the idea of parking seems to be a sticking point, there is the opportunity for them to work with the Public Works and Utility Department, get a use of street permit for them to allow for parking in the right-of-way. Regarding conformance to the comprehensive plan, if you go to the land use map, Paul, the comprehensive plan identifies the site. It's kind of split. You can see on the south side of the site as appropriate for industrial uses, and the north portion of the site, north of First Street, as appropriate for residential uses. So we kind of look at the mix of that to say it's more of a commercial residential mix as what's appropriate. What's interesting about this site is, as I mentioned before, this is a non-restricted limited industrial use zone site right now. And actually the provisions of the PUD in a sense are down zoning and limiting the number of uses on the site than what is currently permitted regarding intensity, noise, light, odor, kind of nuisance type of things when they are across the street from residential uses. So in a sense, this is actually restricting the site more than what it actually is right now. Staff finds that it is in conformance to the locational guidelines of the comprehensive plan, specifically those that talk about infill development that maximizes public investment. The site has been underutilized or unutilized for some time. This is an example of adaptive reuse. They're intending to use most of the structures and to kind of move into the site and actually improve and clean up the site and actually make it bring back to the community and invest in the community as well. In terms of land use compatibility, again, this is a limited industrial site with no restrictions. The provisions of the PUD kind of downzone it and has regulations regarding screening and landscaping, the Delano design guidelines for architectural controls, as well as hours of operation that would mitigate possible negative impacts on the site. Staff finds that it's in conformance with the Wichita Places for People plan, specifically strategy number 3 that states improve the economic feasibility for commercial services and uses and the markets necessary to support them. This is an area of opportunity as defined by the Wichita Places for People plan, which looks for strategic investment both from private and public sources in order to help reinvigorate and stabilize the area. This is an example of private investment with adaptive reuse of buildings that are currently unutilized. The Delano neighborhood future land use map identifies a portion of the site is appropriate for commercial development and another portion of the site is appropriate for residential development, much like the comprehensive plan. So you kind of blend those together to say that it's appropriate for kind of a mix of commercial and residential development. Guiding principles of the Delano neighborhood plan, there's one that says support an innovative, vibrant, and diverse economy. The proposed PUD provides an opportunity to downzone the industrial properties while supporting the expansion of a local business. And also, there's a policy that says take better care of what we already have. The proposed PUD permits adaptive reuses of existing commercial and industrial buildings for utilization versus them being vacant and unutilized. Overall, staff is recommending approval subject to the conditions in your staff report. One of those conditions is having the modified PUD language per staff recommendation. My understanding is that the applicant is in agreement with staff recommended PUD language. They are here to speak on that as well. Findings for our recommendation. The property could currently be used for industrial purposes, which would probably have more of a detrimental impact on surrounding neighborhood properties that are residential. The PUD provides regulations that would actually restrict the type of uses and significantly reduce the opportunity for nuisance-related issues regarding commercial development in the area. And as we talked about, we find that it is in conformance with the comprehensive plan. We can go through pictures of the site if we want to move forward, Paul. This is the PUD boundary. You can see that there is a kind of a cutout here. That is a separate property owner who did not wish to be part of the PUD, so it does not apply to them. The PUD kind of wraps around their property as of right now. So that property will stay zone limited industrial, and the PUD will wrap around it. Next picture, please. This is on the north side of the site. We're on the east side of Millwood looking north. This is where the railroad tracks cross over Millwood. You can see the single-family home on the other side of the railroad tracks from the subject site. Next picture. This is looking across the street. The TF3 property zoned there is developed with a duplex. Next picture. This is also looking northwest toward the west side of Millwood at a residential property across the street. Next picture. This is on the south side of the property looking northwest. You can see here the compatibility we have with residential, commercial buildings sandwiched in the middle, and then residential properties to the north. Again, this is on the west side of Millwood. These properties are zoned primarily general commercial and limited industrial. Next picture. This is looking directly west. That commercial building we saw, that's right here. These are 3 houses directly north of that. Again, this is right across the street. Next picture. This is looking at the site. This is First Street, and First Street was vacated, and so they're able to gate off what was the right-of-way. It's now part of the private property. Next picture. This is looking at the north end of the site. You can see that this current building there is in pretty decent disrepair, and some definite need of some TLC. Next picture. This is looking towards the south side of the site. It's this building right here that is the property that is not included. This building is included, and then property to the north is included. Next picture. This is looking at the storage facility. This is Millwood, but we're pretty much right at Douglas, so this is south of the side. This is a storage facility that was constructed. Next picture. This is on the back side of the site. As you can see, I'm on this street here. This is looking at the vehicle storage yard that's east of the site. Next picture. This is looking at these residential properties that are north of it, but on the other side of the railroad track. Next picture. This is looking directly at the site. These are the existing trees, and this is kind of the undeveloped area that is east of the site on the other side of the railroad track. Next picture. That looks like it's it. I can stand. I have had calls from individuals in the neighborhood with concerns of possible noise or nuisance things related to that. There was concerns about significant amount of on-street parking that may, potentially prevent people from being in their driveways or being able to pull into their driveways or things like that. But I will stand for questions and let public comment come later today.
I have one that's possibly irrelevant, but in the Delano neighborhood plan, I believe that parcel to the east on the other side of the railroad tracks was intended to become a park. Is that still in the works? Do you know anything about that?
As you can see on this land use plan, you're right, it's designated for parks and open space. As for it turning into a park and open space, I am not aware of any active plans for the creation of it.
Okay. Just.
Any other questions of staff?
But that land is owned by the city then?
Actually, I'm not actually aware. I apologize. I don't know if it's directly owned. I think at least a portion of it is currently privately owned.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Philip. Applicant or agent?
Thank you, Kim. Drive, Wichita, Kansas. Just to address that question, the property to the east is not owned by the city. It has actually recently sold. So just kind of give you a little bit of background. Central Standard Brewing has been operating for about 7 years now on South Greenwood. They've been several years now looking for what might be the best appropriate place to expand their operations. They're a little bit hemmed in where they're at now. So this property came on their radar, has a lot of room to grow. It's in a neighborhood that really kind of fits their business model. There are lots of great plans in the works for Delano with some multi-use pathways that would really benefit this property too. So we started out by coming to planning department and just proposing what we had. followed that up with meeting with some of the neighborhood representatives. We have been to the Delano Neighborhood Association and to the Delano United meetings, and were very well received there. Asked if there were any issues that they could see that we hadn't already addressed in the PUD. And really, there were no negative comments at all. There was a lot of support there. Really felt like this was a good fit with the Delano neighborhood plan. Could potentially start drawing some activity farther to the west of Seneca. You know, in our dream world, it eventually brings the queue line farther to the west. We'll work on that. So, but really overall, the project is a great improvement over what is currently on that site. The property owners have already started cleaning that up, clearing brush. It's been in disuse for a long time, and it's kind of become an attractive nuisance. And by having this kind of development, it really is going to be a catalyst for the neighborhood overall for improvement. There are a lot more restrictions on it than would be just if it's zoned outright limited industrial. So overall, just a great benefit to the neighborhood. Some of the things that were discussed were issues like parking. One of our intents is to work with the Public Works Department and request a minor street permit to do some diagonal parking along Millwood. There is a significant right-of-way. That street has 80 feet of right-of-way, so there's quite a bit of room in there that could be done, and it's already in place to the south of this property. Along that you saw the building where the storage facility is. There is currently diagonal parking along that building, so we would like to continue that on into this area. So some of the parking will be provided on site, but we're just trying to get a balance there of not using up too much of the site with parking and losing the ability to use the property for, you know, an outdoor beer garden, games. Central Standard Brewing is a very family-friendly environment. There's kids, dogs are always welcome. You know, there's lots of yard games going on, things like that, food trucks. So trying to minimize losing space on the site for parking, but being able to provide quite a lot of diagonal parking along Millwood there. We would ask that along that same vein, that the requirement to screen parking would be waived if that's diagonal parking, because there's really no way to screen the diagonal parking from the neighbors to the west. So I would be glad to stand for any questions that you have. And
Mr. Green?
Yeah, Kim, on the diagonal parking that you're referencing, how wide is Millwood, the paved portion of Millwood, as opposed to the right-of-way on Millwood?
there's approximately 18 feet of unpaved portion of Millwood.
On the, in what would be considered the right-of-way?
Right.
Between the curb and
Yes.
the existing right-of-way?
Right.
Because, yeah, I was trying to visualize diagonal parking there, and all I saw were wrecks and potential
Yeah.
conflict, where vehicles would be backing up into the traffic coming not only from the south, but also from the north, so.
Yeah, like I said, it's already existing to the south of this, so it's, in practice, it's already happening, so.
Right, but it's paved
Right.
all the way to the right-of-way line.
Right, and so we would pave the area that would be in diagonal parking, definitely.
Ms. Foster?
Just because I live near here and know how many trains go by, do you have plans for some sort of fence or something
There will
to
be
protect?
fencing, just for safety purposes, to make sure that no kids, dogs, people
Yeah,
get into that railroad right-of-way area. So definitely.
Okay,
there
the
will-
trains go very slowly, but that doesn't matter if you get hit by a train.
Right. Yeah, that is definitely part of the plans. The buildings on this site, they will have to be evaluated to see, structurally, whether or not it makes sense to keep the buildings, rehab them, or if they, ideally, that would be best, and if possible. There's a lot of trees on the site. They want to keep absolutely everyone if they can. So, this, from an appearance standpoint, is only going to improve at this
Ms.
point.
Foster?
You indicate one of the purposes to increase the production and make this the primary production facility. So truck traffic, like, does that mean semi-truck loads
No,
of?
no,
Okay.
everything is done just, maybe box vans.
Okay. So it's not, you're not gonna have a semi sitting there parked in?
No.
And then, the outdoor entertainment activity, like a lot of times the number of people has a big impact on the sound, et cetera. So do you have plans enough to say what would be the occupancy, basically,
That's
that you're
gonna-
looking at?
That will all have to go through MABCD,
Yeah.
Based on capacity and,
But like, are you envisioning like a 300-seat venue where
no, I
hundreds
mean,
of people come to convene?
the scale
or-
of it would be more like, a small band.
Okay.
A little acoustic trio type thing. Definitely, there may be some events that would be in connection with, having food trucks there. But again, that was why we added the limited hours of operation
Okay.
too.
Mr. Moore?
Tim, you answered most of my questions. The one that I would like to hear is, it says staff recommends that a language be added to the PUD regarding adherence to the Delano overlay district and architectural control. Are you guys okay with that?
Yeah, I mean, that's why I say ideally, we'd like to leave the buildings that are there and then not have to start from scratch with architectural renderings but we do understand that it is in the Delano district and there will be that level of review required.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody in the commission chamber want to speak on this item, please come forward. Give us your name and address. You got 3 minutes.
My name is Margaret Tucker, and I live at 208 North Vine. And this,
Can you pull the mic down?
so I need to start over. My name is Margaret Tucker, and I live at 208 North Vine, which is 1 block east of the proposed site. And if they don't have a parking lot that will take care of all their traffic, there's a lot of small children in the area, so the traffic could cause problems. And there's a lot of traffic up and down Vine, which goes down Millwood then too. So if they don't have to have a parking lot, I'm definitely against this. Thank you for listening to me.
Anybody have any questions of the speaker? Is there anybody else want to speak on this item? Is there anybody virtual want to speak on this item? Guess not, so rebuttal time.
Kim Edgington for the record, just in our opinion, the diagonal parking that we can provide along Millwood will serve a lot of the parking needs. And also, we are not opposed, again, to providing parking on the site, and will do so as much as possible. But we also understand that there's a lot, or they anticipate that there's a lot of the customer base that may not be driving to this location. Maybe biking, maybe walking, maybe riding the queue line, walking the distance from where it ends. So, right now they have been excellent neighbors at their existing facility, have received nothing but compliments from the neighboring property owners to how they have handled issues such as this. So they certainly are not in business to be a bad neighbor, and will do everything necessary to make sure that they provide a safe, welcoming environment for all types of uses, whether it's pedestrian, bicycle, or vehicle use.
Any additional questions? Agent?
Question for staff, I guess, maybe JR. Can the commission recommend that diagonal parking be, strongly recommend that it be approved, or add some comment about that to our plan? Who approves diagonal parking?
J.R. Cox, Metropolitan Planning. I think the commission might be able to do that. I think the issue would be I don't think the commission can require a department of the city to do something that they're not here to speak on, as whether they'd be amenable to doing that.
Yeah.
Not that they wouldn't, but we don't know that. And I don't think the commission can require, because if that's the way it turned out to be a requirement, then that would become an issue.
Public Works is gonna have to approve this anyway.
Traffic.
Right.
Yeah.
Correct.
And traffic. So I wouldn't see trying to put something on it because they may not agree with us. Any other questions? If not, I'll bring it back to commission. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move that we approve per staff comment.
Got a
Second.
motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Ms. Foster. Motion by Mr. Green. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is there anybody opposed?
Aye.
Ms.
Next
Cunningham,
item.
can you clarify, was your vote for or against?
Mine?
Ms. Cunningham, I apologize.
Oh, I'm for it.
Okay, thank you.
I hurried too fast. Next item is 4.5, PUD 2022-00014. And we get Philip again.
Again, good afternoon. Philip Zevenbergen for the record. PUD 2214 is a zone change request from SF20 single-family residential in unincorporated Sedgwick County to PUD planned unit development to create the Spring Ranch planned unit development number 102. As you can see on the screen, the property is located on the southwest corner of US 54 Kellogg and South 159th Street East. 159th Street is the county line. Properties east of this location are in Butler County and the city of Andover. Properties surrounding this, anything you see in white, red, or gray is in the city limits of Wichita. Anything that you see in the kind of tan peach color, which is SF20 zoning, is unincorporated Sedgwick County. So the majority of the property is surrounded by city limits of either Wichita or Andover. This planned unit development would create the opportunity to provide a mixture of commercial and residential zoning. The property is 122 acres. It's pretty large. It's not quite a full quarter section, but it's close there too. If you want to move forward to the exhibit of one more. We'll just leave it here on the PUD drawing. That'll work. Overall, in general, the parcels that are closest to Kellogg, so that would be parcel 1, parcel 2, and parcel 3, are slated for the majority of commercial development, with parcel 3 being a possibility of a mixture of commercial or residential. With the size of this project or potential project and the time it would take to see full development, the applicant stated that the type of development on some of these parcels, whether they're commercial or residential, may be dictated by market factors at the time that they're looking at starting to develop it. So some of the complexity of this planned unit development is related to whether or not, especially parcel 3, whether or not parcel 3 is going to be built non-residentially or with residential, and there's a lot of that detail in your staff report. We also have parcel 5 and parcel 4. Here, parcel 4 being slated for residential development only. One small parcel, parcel 6 right here, currently has a cell phone tower. that if it's currently permitted right now by conditional use, that's not changing. If the cell tower were to disappear in the future, there's language in the PUD that says this parcel will conform to the development standards of parcel 5, which is what surrounds it. Two parts of this PUD, this reserve right here and this reserve right here, are boundaries going around 2 bodies of water that flow through the site. There is a portion of the site that is in the floodplain. Floodplain does not prohibit development, it just makes it a little bit more difficult because you have to do with making sure you're above certain elevations. There are portions of the site that are in the floodway. Floodways are generally dictated by FEMA and usually are not able to be touched. Not that there would be the intention to do so, but floodplain, there's a lot of different things that go along with that. Most of that stuff regarding development with drainage and things like that is handled at the time of platting. Again, this is a zoning case that's going to be talking about whether or not general land uses are applicable on the site. The functionality and the specifics of how the site is developed are generally dealt at the time of platting or when during the building permit review process. For discussion today, the site is generally broken up between parcels 1, 2, 3, and 5, as well as parcel 4, because 1, 2, 3, and 5 have conforming standards that are generally similar, as discussed in your staff report, regarding setbacks away from Kellogg, internal setbacks, which will follow general commercial zoning. Parcel 3 is a little bit different because it specifies specific types of setbacks along the west and the south property line, depending on the type of development, both on parcel 3 as well as parcel 4. And that's because they want to be cognizant of the residential development that is west of the site. We talked about parcel 4. This is the one with the least amount of restrictions because they're saying a base zoning for it is for 2-family residential, which would allow duplexes or even single-family homes to be built. The unique part about parcel 4 is that they are looking for custom setbacks that are listed in your staff report. For the sake of time, knowing we've already seen this type of a setback layout in previous cases, I'm not going to go through them exhaustively. If there are specific questions, either I or the applicant can delve into that. But specifically, they're looking at doing kind of an alleyway, front porch style development where they're looking for some smaller setbacks to allow buildings to accommodate an alley access where their garages are going to be off the alleys. You have more of a front porch development either off of future roadways or potential greenways, things of that nature. As I referenced in your staff report, these same setbacks they're proposing for parcel 4 were part of PUD 95, which is the courtyard at the moorings development up at K96 and Meridian. There's nothing different about those, and so these setbacks were approved in previous PUD applications that have come before the city, and the city council has approved them. This is a county case, will go before the Board of County Commissioners, but still the setbacks are no different than what has been reviewed before by this body. Screening and landscaping is fairly complex, again, with the size and the nature of this PUD. So we'll just walk through it very methodically. If you go to the aerial image, one of the things that's unique about this site is that there's a fairly established hedgerow along 159th Street. This is Lincoln down here. Eventually that goes away in the backyards of these properties, as well as along the side property line. The PUD states that this hedgerow is considered a major barrier if it is maintained, meaning that if there is development along a hedgerow, that hedgerow satisfies some screening and landscaping requirements. A unique part about this is that mostly applies to parcels 1, 2, 3, and 5 because they could have a commercial component to the development. Parcel 4, again, which is in the southwest corner, does not require any type of screening or landscaping because they're intending up to duplex development adjacent to single family, and the Unified Zoning Code does not require screening or landscaping between those two types of developments. So in terms of the hedgerow or tree row that is there, there's not necessarily any protection of that there because the Unified Zoning Code does not require that type of separation between what the zoning code considers compatible developments. The PUD talks about possible screening and landscaping between parcels 3 and 4. Again, this is the one, the fate of parcel 3 is probably most dependent upon market factors regarding whether it will be developed residentially or commercially. Again, I won't go into the grave details of what that screening is. It's in your staff report there, but it could be anything from if it's residential to residential, that nothing is required if it's multifamily residential, to the duplex development on parcel 4 that they may require some landscape buffering. If it's non-residential with commercial development, they're going to add a masonry wall plus the landscaping. So again, it kind of depends on what the future development will look like. Signage on the site is more or less per the code. There's a lot of details in there regarding what the signs will be. Of particular note is that on parcel 3, which again is this northwest corner of the site, there's a stipulation that says that building signs are prohibited on the west and south facades when they're adjacent to residential uses. Again, that's the same thing for parcel 5 being over here. It even has the stipulations of residential uses across 159th Street into Butler County and Andover. Regarding off-site signage, they do allow off-site and billboard signs along Kellogg. All of the stipulations within that signage of the PUD is per the code, so there's nothing unique about that information provided in your staff report. Properties surrounding this, we have single-family SF5 on the west and the south. You can see here the majority of that property is developed with single-family homes. There is a utility substation right here, just on the west side in the very northwest corner, adjacent to this site there. This property down here is on single-family SF5, but is agricultural land. These properties over here in Andover have varying degrees of single-family residential zoning and are developed with kind of suburban-style single-family residential and larger lot single-family residential. This property here along Kellogg has a commercial zoning in Andover and developed with a fireworks stand and like a RV recreational vehicle sales lot. Property to the north is limited commercial and planned unit development. The limited commercial property is not developed. The planned unit development has kind of a retail store for landscaping rock for it. The property has 2 conditional uses on it. One is for the cell phone tower that we talked about. Another one is in the southwest corner that would have allowed a governmental use. It just was never constructed. The PUD language says that if this zoning is approved, that the conditional use for the government use down in the southwest corner will be nullified, and that will no longer be a permitted use on the site. They are anticipating extending Wichita water and sewer services. However, they are not anticipating annexation at this time. They're not required to. However, typically when they sign into Wichita utilities, they usually have to sign a no protest waiver if the city were to want to annex them in the future. So kind of leaves the door open on whether they want to petition annex or whether or not the city would choose to annex them. It's not really germane to the zoning case, but they are going to provide suburban style development. They will be hooking into Wichita utilities. Whether or not the city chooses to annex them in the future is really up to the property owner or the city of Wichita. Public services regarding the street network as well as the utilities, all of this will potentially have changes to it at the time of platting. If you're not aware, KDOT has green-lighted at least funding for design for the next 2 miles of East Kellogg from K96 interchange, which is off the map over here, all the way to 159th Street. So that will also be taken into consideration when it's, in terms of the time of platting, if any land will be used for right-of-way for possible future Kellogg expansion. In terms of whether or not additional right-of-way is needed for 159th Street, Lincoln, Brookhaven, and what the street network internally will look like, that will be determined at the time of platting. Something interesting to note is that this street right here and this street down here, these subdivisions were platted with street stubs in 1980 and 1979, with, basically indicating that there was the anticipation of future development on this property to provide opportunities for internal connections through those areas. Whether or not that's determined, again, will be at the time of platting in terms of where access will be from and whether or not those streets are opened up into this internal site. Regarding the comprehensive plan, the community investments plan identifies the north portion of the site as appropriate for new residential and employment mix, which is what those parcels are considering to do, so we find that it's conformance to that. It identifies the south portion of the site as appropriate for new residential, which is primarily what the applicant is looking to provide as well. So we find that it's in conformance to the comprehensive plan. Overall, staff is recommending approval, subject to the staff recommended PUD language in your report. Staff worked back and forth with the applicant regarding suggested changes and things like that, and I believe we are in agreement with what the PUD language looks like. One caveat to that, which was information I received yesterday, so just more of an audible here. One of the uses that they initially listed as being prohibited is a golf course, and they've kind of been to the point of like, well, maybe that could be something we might do in the future. We don't want to restrict ourselves, not necessarily saying they will put a golf course in, but that's one thing they want to remove from the list. With today's meeting, that if there's a recommendation for approval, that would be a permitted use on the site for you guys to consider. I think at this point we can walk through one of the findings that we have for our approval. The site is currently single-family SF20. It has one single-family residence right here with a private drive and some accessory structures. The majority of this site, or a good chunk of the site on the eastern side, is in a floodplain, which again just makes development kind of difficult. It could be replatted with single-family SF20 uses. If it's single-family residential, that's a minimum of a 20,000 square foot lot. If it is rezoned, the comprehensive plan identifies it as appropriate for new residential and commercial mix, especially along the highway frontage of Kellogg. There is language within the PUD that is designed to mitigate possible negative impacts. Regarding the impact to proposed community developments, obviously this would be a significant amount of development, but again, during the time of platting, when it comes to improvements to public infrastructure for water and sewer and roads and drainage and all that stuff is taken care of during the time of platting. Drainage plans are reviewed and approved prior to any type of development and things of that nature. At this time, I can walk through some pictures. There's quite a few. I'll try to go through them relatively quickly just to give you an idea of what this site looks like. This is at the corner. We're on 159th Street looking east. This is the commercial development in Andover. Next picture. This is going south 159th Street. This is that subdivision in Andover with the single-family homes. Next picture. This is farther south. This is along the subdivision there. This is their drainage detention pond. Next picture. Again, this is farther south to the larger lot single-family development on the east side of 159th Street. Next picture. Next picture, please. This is on Lincoln looking south. Next picture. This is farther along Lincoln looking at the agricultural field. That's single-family zoned. Next picture. This is at Brookhaven and Lincoln looking at single-family home to the west. Next picture. This is looking north at the site. You can see the majority of the site is undeveloped. You can see a bunch of the existing trees on the location. Next picture. Again, this is more on the eastern side of the site. You can see the cell phone tower there and portions of the existing hedgerow along the edges. Next picture. This is along 159th looking west. You can see the existing tree row that's there. Next picture. This is on the north side of the site. There's not existing hedgerow along the property line, but these trees are along the waterway that goes through the property. Next picture. It's looking to the northwest at the limited commercial zone property that's undeveloped. Next picture. It's looking to the northeast at property in Butler County. Next picture. This is internal on the side on the existing private drive. You can see there's a fair amount of trees and just undeveloped land in the middle of the site. Next picture. Again, closer to Kellogg, the site was under one owner, and they had their house in the middle of almost a quarter section. Next picture. This kind of gives you just, again, more character of just the undeveloped nature of the site. Next picture. This is the existing single-family home, kind of in the middle of the site. Next picture. And At your desks is a pretty large packet of emails. I did email those, the majority of them to you yesterday. I did receive a few more since I emailed it yesterday afternoon as well as this morning. So you have in your hands the full packet of emails that I have received since the writing of the staff report. So some of the beginning are ones you've already received. I just kept putting them on the end. So you do have all of the email comments that I received, even up till, I think it was 1 o'clock, that we ran some additional ones over from emails we received after I left the office to come to the meeting. So all of those have been given to you for your consideration. General ones that I have heard are a possible increase in traffic if roads are opened up, the potential loss of the hedgerow and what the effect of that would be on the property, in addition to concerns about the duplex development in the southwest corner of the site. However, I believe there are a significant number of people here who can provide their comments to you in their own words, and so I'll leave that to them. With that, I can stand for any questions.
Any questions to staff? Mr. Warren?
So this question's got an obvious answer, but I want to make sure. Since we don't have the plat yet, we don't know where the entrance and exits are going to be. If the intent is to leave the hedgerow, and then we decide to put an entrance in there, there's nothing that we're going to approve in terms of leaving the hedgerow that would keep us from tearing those trees out for entrance.
I think it's generally understood that preserving the hedgerow except for driveways and things, because even in our landscape ordinance and things like that, when we require landscape street yards or landscape buffers, there are usually provisions or just an understanding that they don't apply, screening does not apply where there is a driveway or an access point.
But just to clarify Mr. Warren's question or point, that would be when it's commercial on one side and residential on the other, or would we be expecting that in plot 4 or section 4 of this, parcel 4, I guess, excuse me, would we also have that same expectation of that hedgerow being maintained, kept and maintained?
Currently, right now, for the boundary of parcel 4 on the west and the south side, the hedgerow is not required to be maintained because they're anticipating residential development. If it's the will of this board to require maintenance of that hedgerow on parcel 4, again, I think the understanding would apply that screening and landscaping and all other circumstances that we've seen in zoning cases usually have that exception for where entrances or driveways are. You know, we require parking lot screening, but you're allowed to put a driveway through and not have to put screening across a driveway. So
Right.
again, I think there's that general understanding of acceptance of screening and landscaping is required, but if you have a point of access, that it's okay that that portion of the screening or landscaping is removed.
So it could be expected to keep that
Yeah.
hedgerow there
And
between
if you wanted to,
parcel
if
4 and
right,
the
if you
adjoining
wanted to,
neighborhood.
just to make things clear, we could write that into the PUD language just so that there's no question about it regarding wherever the hedgerow is maintained, whatever that final language looks like. If you wanted it specifically written in the PUD that it doesn't apply wherever rights of way or driveways are, you know, just to make it clean, that's something that definitely can happen.
Any other questions to staff? Seeing none, applicant or agent, please.
Good afternoon, Brian Lindeback, MKEC Engineering, 411 North Webb Road, on behalf of the owner and applicant. First of all, I'd like to just share with you, if you aren't aware, this owner is the same owner that developed the waterfront development in East Wichita. I think it's also important to note that the waterfront development was developed under limited industrial zoning. I think that's an important thing to note, that they certainly could have developed it much more intensely than they did, but they chose to develop it in a quality, very deliberate manner and very methodical about their choices as the development process went along. So I think that's an important point to make note and should give people some level of confidence that this developer knows what they're doing. With that said, this is a mixed-use development, also similar to the waterfront development. The waterfront development, as you know, has single family. It also has commercial businesses, offices. So the hope is that this would follow suit of some sort of combination of different types of land uses mixed together. The property, as you know, as you've seen the maps, and it has a significant amount of floodplain on it. It heads up the confluence of some streams. There's a lot of attention being paid to that, and I think it's important to note that not only the developer, but MKC is in responsible charge of making sure the drainage gets handled properly. We're going to go through the proper channels, both state, federal, and local guidelines. So I think with regard to concerns for that, that's an important thing to note as well. We were provided the opportunity to read some of the comments by the neighbors, by staff yesterday, and our owner and client who is here reached out to a number of them and has been able to speak to them about some of their concerns. I think the top three concerns were the hedgerow. I think you guys have read about that, hopefully, and the other concern was about access through the neighborhood. And then the other concern was for the different types of land uses on parcel 4 for TF3 multifamily / duplex zoning. So one of the things I think important to note is, as an option, we asked that we have the golf course added back in. So I would ask that as you consider approvals, that we consider that as an amendment to what you were presented with. The other thing is, as far as amendments, and again, I know this owner is very sensitive to the neighbors. He wouldn't have reached out to them if he wasn't concerned. Of course, on a limited time basis that we did have that. They would like to present a couple other amendments to the Planning Commission here. And that is, and I'll read them slowly, but in gist, I'll read you what I want to have in the PUD for a provision. But in gist, we want to have single-family residential where it abuts the single-family residential on the south and west. And likewise, we'd like to preserve the hedgerows along the south and west where abutting single-family residential. But I'll certainly read the provision here if you'd like me to do that, and we'll work it with staff as well. But I'll start. I'll try to read slowly just so you guys track and understand it. The client is agreeing to not remove existing living tree rows within 20 feet of the west and south boundaries of parcel 4 or adjoining existing residential lots, and provided, however, where streets and utility connections are required at the time of platting. So that's a fairly straightforward language. We're going to we see value in those trees just as they do. So the plan is for residential there, residential on residential. The other item that I mentioned was the 200-foot single family. So this provision would write and read, only allowed uses on parcel shall be single-family residential land uses within 200 feet of the west and south boundaries of parcel 4 or adjoining existing residential uses. So again, I think that says a lot to the developer. They're very sensitive to the needs. I think if you read through some of the provisions, they've been sensitive to the needs of the folks in Andover, not necessarily in Sedgwick County. There's a lot of moving parts here. So I think, unless you have specific, I can go into a lot of details here, but I think it'd be better to just hear if you have any questions of me and I can answer them.
Any questions, the agent?
Got one comment. I would like to thank you and the developer for your quick response to concerns and issues that were sent to the commission and to the planning department, specifically related to the trees and the residential buffer between residential and the multifamily on your property as opposed to.
Sure. And I'll just note again that we did not limit the ability to close off those access points that were platted in the 70s and 80s as referenced. I think as part of good development in our community, having interconnectivity is good in general, but I think those items will come up at the time of platting more certainly.
Any questions? Speaker? Hearing none?
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody in the commission chamber want to speak on this item? Please come forward. Give your name and address. You got 3 minutes. And I know we've seen a lot of comments that are the same. I would like to limit not to hear the same thing over and over and over.
Okay, I will do my best. My name is Michael McFerrin. I live at 1110 South Sagebrush on the west side of the property. My property butts up to it. Many of my concerns have just been addressed. I appreciate that. I wanted to say that I wasn't really excited about this development. I'm getting more used to it. I didn't expect at the beginning that it would be, the request would be from a single-family 20 to a PUD. That's a big change. That really scares us, especially considering that there are single-family homes on 3 of the 4 sides. In any case, I want it to be developed in a manner that is fair to both the applicant and to the people, the citizens that have lived there for many years. I've lived there for 25 years myself, and I really love the area. I hope you know, because we certainly do, the extent to which this will change the character of the neighborhood, or it possibly could. It will change from bucolic, private and quiet to more of an exposed and loud and bright. That's concerning to us. It will change the quality of life of the residents to one degree or another, especially if not done correctly. It sounds like they're trying to do it the right way, and I really appreciate that. I understand that the feelings and emotions and the quality of life are not the entire story here. But with that said, with that in mind, I would, and again, these have already been brought up, and I'm sorry if I repeat them. The following 3 requirements be added to the PUD, and that's not removing the hedgerow and allowing access or some kind of access so that they can access and maintain it, because that provides me the privacy that I have loved for 25 years. So that's one thing. Maybe they could add a buffer zone, such as a gravel road or something, so that they could access and maintain it. I think this is also addressed, the single-family 5, or the two-family 3 is very concerning to us. The duplexes, the fourplexes, or whatever. We're single-family 5, and we would love to see single-family 5, just on the other side of the tree line. Then finally, the traffic issue, the egress and outgress of that area. That may be a platting issue, but we don't want all that extra traffic coming through there. That just would be very detrimental to us. So me and my neighbors hope that you can, at the very least, do this much for us. Do those 3 points. The hedgerow is a big deal. Removal of the hedgerow, concern about the duplexes, the increased traffic, the increased light and noise pollution.
Sir, your time's
I'm
up.
sorry. Okay.
Can you
So
wrap up?
anyway, I thank you for your time and your consideration.
Any questions, the speaker? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Next speaker, please.
I'm going to move this up.
Yeah.
I'm Charles Brackeen II. I go by Sonny. Spent the last 30 years running from Kansas, only to find myself to return to take care of my elderly parents. And I recently built what I would consider my retirement home about 4 years ago in this development to the south.
Could you give your address, please? Could we have your address, please?
15405 East Castle Street.
Thank you.
So I'm in the southern portion. In fact, if you step out my garage and you look straight out, it's probably about the same distance as that wall right there. That's that hedgerow, and where one of the streets now currently ends.
Okay.
I purposely picked this location because I have 10 grandchildren and 1 great-grandchild coming along the way, and this concerns me. I don't want to have access in there. I purposely looked for a home that would have that seclusion. So what I'd like to do now is just to say, the gentleman who was up here earlier, those are the three big concerns for the development. I do appreciate the attentiveness to listening to some of the concerns of the neighborhood. What we didn't get to see in the picture presentation earlier was the establishment of the homes to the west. And I think that would have been significant, and it's important to see what kind of homes and what you would typically see in this area. That's kind of what we're expecting to see if you had homes built to the north there.
Thank you. Any questions of the speaker? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My name's Jim Wilson. I live at 1049 South Sagebrush in Wichita, Kansas. I've been a resident of this area for about 38 years. I think the developer has made some nice concessions. I think there are means that through discussion we can probably solve part of the traffic issues by closing those streets off with some attention so that the fire department can get in and out if they need to. I think that can be done. Second of all, on the picture that we're seeing up here, where you come down 159th Street, and you make that left-hand turn or right-hand turn, the property that is not developed, I believe, belongs to either the city or the county as part of 4 Mile Creek Water Plant. They use it for a dumping area for the sewage, so I'm confident that that is not going to be a residential development anywhere in the near future. The houses to the west and the south have a value of someplace between $450,000 and $300,000 for every one of them. We're not interested in seeing inexpensive homes going up on the other side of that tree row and having access to ours. Needless to say, we have our own traffic problems. We've asked the city for some attention to them. They don't seem to pay attention. So we have a committee we're going to ask for, be able to do some of our own road repair. And I thank you, and I would maybe ask that you defer this a little bit so that the developer and the people, and I can tell you that I have talked to a great number of my neighbors up and down that line. I think if we could have a little more time to talk, I think we can probably resolve all the issues.
Thank you. Any questions, speaker? Next speaker, please.
My name is Dane Jennings. I live at 1201 South Brookhaven Street in Wichita. Our property is the 5-acre plot at the southwest corner of Lincoln and Brookhaven. I must begin my prepared remarks by saying that I believe I and some of those in attendance are here to request the Commission's understanding and hopefully consideration of what, in my case anyway, is a rather benign request. In that view, I take a conciliatory stance. However, I must also say that I'm compelled to voice an opposite view and hopeful that members of the Commission will understand my view. For the past 19 years, myself and my family have enjoyed the privacy, the quiet, and the tranquility of living in a truly unique neighborhood with little traffic, no streetlights, privacy, and quiet that is certainly rare to find. It came as a disappointment when we saw the for sale sign put on the Stark property, but no surprise when we saw the sold painted in gold across the sign. We knew that the property was and remained zoned as single-family residential with a measurable percentage within its boundaries being in floodplain. Our concerns were somewhat allayed about the potential size and perhaps the quality of the development. We and the neighbors received a letter from the Planning Commission at about the middle of June. It was a little bit confusing in that there was a bolded area with an arrow pointing to it, and it was not clear whether or not that was just the zoned area or whether or not it was the entire plat, the entire 122 acres. It wasn't until the signs came up on the evening of June 24th when my wife and I were coming home from dinner, and saw someone putting the signs up, that it became evident that it was the entire property. That was only 2 weeks ago, including the week of 4th of July. The calendar timing called for this announced emergency meeting has given us approximately 7 days to achieve some rudimentary understanding and react to an announcement while still having to run our business, and for others to either run a business or go to work. That has the potential to negatively affect the livability, not to mention the financial impact of not only our home of 19 years, but also the roughly 60 families that border the property, including those in Butler County to the east of 159th Street. The question must be asked, why an emergency meeting that provides the neighborhood 7 days to react when there is a routine schedule?
Your time's up. Do you need additional time?
I do, please.
How much time would you?
2 minutes.
Move to approve for 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you. When there's a routine schedule, it doesn't seem fair that there has clearly been a significant amount of time, money, research, and effort expended on the part of the county and city governments and the developer to develop the planned PUD. Certainly more than 7 days, and with the immeasurable benefit of professional expertise and experience. Bottom line, the 60 families that will be affected are left unarmed with no hope of protecting their interest. It just doesn't seem fair. I appreciate the opportunity and the Commission's attention to my voicing of my dissatisfaction with the process. I'm hopeful that the Commission has some understanding of my position and the basis of my remarks. I'm also hopeful that my remarks will not taint the Commission's understanding of what I believe is a benign request, which is simply to preserve the hedgerows on the south and the west side of the property. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate the developer's consideration of our comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, Speaker? Thank you, sir. Next speaker, please.
My name is David Gosha. I live at 851 South Sagebrush Court, just off of parcel 3 up here. The only thing that I'm really concerned about is the opening of Spring Creek Drive that would lead into there. The traffic that would come through there, not to count for some lost semi-driver, some tour bus company that just happens to be going in there for something to eat, that might end up on that street, on that road through there. There's a lot of children in here. This is a very area that of great concern of having the traffic going through there, especially when there's a lot of ample opportunity to put entryways and exitways through those areas. And again, I want to just amplify that this is kind of a quick meeting and there was not enough time for everything to be done. Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Hello. Debbie Brim. I live at 15106 East Spring Creek. So my concern mostly is about the street opening up. We live 3 houses down from the hedgerow line. I love hearing that it's possible, hopefully, cross your fingers, that they don't open up our street. If people have company over and we do park, maybe one, if I have company, my neighbor across the street has company, there's not really enough room in the street to have 2 more additional cars coming down that street. And there are kids. We have 2 neighbors. There's only 7 of us that live on the street, 7 houses. There's 2 sets of neighbors that babysit, and they have small grandkids that come over, and they're constantly out in the street. Our street is also kind of the highest elevation, and so coming from the other way, that would also be high elevation. So I can only imagine that would be a hill if it did happen. And we're at plot number 3, which means, I'm sorry, I'm nervous, which means we back up to the commercial spot. So that would be a lot of commercial traffic, trucks coming down our street, then turning the rest of the way into the subdivision. One thing that I want to mention is, well, I've been out of town, so I just got this, and also the information about the Kellogg expansion. A lot of us in the neighborhood exit to go to Kellogg, or we use Kellogg, turn left to go up to Wichita. With the expansion, we're all going to have to go up to 159th and turn around to go to Wichita. I assume the commercial people and whoever else is in this plot is also going to be using Kellogg up to 159th. So that is a ton of traffic. And I'm trying to think in my mind on Kellogg all the way out to the west side. There's probably no other subdivision that dumps right out onto a frontage road. And then on top of that, we'll have all of this traffic also. So I don't know how that's going to work. As far as the flooding, I'm glad they know it's a floodplain. But again, Spring Creek, if they build over there and some of their drainage comes, Spring Creek, where I live, is on top of the hill. So down where we turn on our street is low. Sagebrush comes down and then it goes up. So there's like 3 intersection of water, and it always floods when there's a lot of rain. And I'm concerned that we're going to get more water because it's going to be all concrete and buildings over on that side because it's commercial. But hopefully, my main thing, don't open up the street, and please think about the flooding. I mean, we're not in the floodplain, but we do get a lot of water.
I will tell you that this will have to be platted, the drainage, traffic engineers will look at the traffic, all that will be addressed when the plat's done. But thanks for your information.
Thank you.
Next speaker, please.
Neil Dornbush. I live at 1030 South Sagebrush Street. Most of the concerns have been covered. The hedgerows are very important to us, privacy, security. The direct access roads, the 2 of which have been pointed out, I'd like to highlight that they were originally put in as access between 2 single-family residential areas, not single-family and commercial, or single-family and multifamily. And as already stated, a row of single-family homes along the western boundary and the southern boundary would be greatly appreciated. Then the people who buy those properties are going to know exactly what they're buying into versus our situation where it's being changed. And the last point would be a buffer zone of a gravel road, maybe paralleling the western and the southern hedgerow. That's been mentioned. I'm not sure how it works out in the end, but on the western side, I think they're going to have to do that anyway for access to the high voltage power lines. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
I'm Jill Dankert, and I live on 911 South Sagebrush Court.
Okay.
And there's 2 concerns I have. The school children, they have buses that come out there, and they do busing. And I don't know if that's going to affect the in and out, the exit and entrance. And there's also a natural habitat that's going to be affected. They have like deer, bald eagles, that kind of thing, if that would be taken in consideration in the area. And I think everybody else talked about what I need to talk about. So the body of water out there, there's a creek that's out there off of Brookhaven that runs. I don't know how they would handle that So I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Next speaker. Anybody else want to speak on this item? Is there anybody virtual want to speak on this item?
I do.
I do. Okay. First one, give us your name and address.
Philip Graves, 15031 East Morris Street. My house backs up onto sagebrush. I want to echo many of the same concerns. None of the people in the neighborhood want that hedgerow removed. Additionally, we'd like a buffer between whatever is built on the other side and the hedgerow. We do not want any access to our neighborhood. Those streets need to remain closed off. We already have enough traffic problems as it is. I have small children and I'm terrified of them being anywhere near sagebrush already. This will just add more and more traffic to our neighborhoods. We do not want those streets opened. And we don't want any multifamily, period, but definitely not any multifamily that backs up to any of the hedgerows. We definitely would prefer that those be single family that backs up to the neighborhood. We really just don't want to have to see or hear or deal with that development. Let them be on their own. Let them build their own access in to the land, but not use our neighborhood for access. Those are my main 3 points. So I think I just want to echo that all my neighbors definitely agree upon. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
Oh, I want to add one more thing, if I could. I am in real estate, and I know for a fact that if they don't follow those guidelines I placed out, it will destroy the value of these homes. I have a listing on Sagebrush itself that was listed at $295 and under contract. And so you got anywhere from $300,000 to $400,000 of home values that will be destroyed if they don't build comparable homes on the other side.
Thank you. Next speaker.
My name's Julia Zahn. I live at 15320 East Castle Street, and I echo the same concerns. But one of my biggest concerns is just that Castle Street not be opened up as so people could drive through it, because we have lots of kids in this. It's like a cul-de-sac right now. We have lots of kids that ride their bike, and we bought our property because of the picturesque, beautiful, quiet behind our home, and so just that there would be a buffer and the hedgerow would be maintained. We would appreciate that, and we echo what everyone else has been saying. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other speakers virtually want to speak on this item? Hearing none.
Yes.
Give us your name and address.
My name is Robbie Burke. I live at 15115 Spring Creek Drive. I'm also on one of the dead ends that they're probably wanting to break through. I just wanted to echo everybody else's sentiments that I agree with a lot of them, that we would like to have a buffer between the zone, and I prefer no commercial. And that's all I need to say.
Thank you. Is there anybody else virtual want to speak on this item?
Yes, I would like to. My name's Taylor Snyder. I live at 1315 South Brookhaven Street. Again, I don't want to be repetitive, but I do want to echo this same concerns all my neighbors have spoke to. My main concern, though, as Philip mentioned, is the home values going down. I definitely would not want to see any multifamily homes at all. Comparable single-family homes, I feel is very acceptable. But that's my main concern is seeing the value of our homes decreased. So that's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else virtual that wants to speak on this item? Anybody else? Hearing none, the applicant's got 2 minutes to rebuttal. Before he starts, I want to say, appreciate the way all of you conducted yourselves in speaking to us. Sometimes this gets a little bit out of hand. You guys did a very nice job. Go ahead, Brian.
Sir.
Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. I wasn't sure if I heard someone online there. Sorry.
Yes, sir. I'm online.
Okay, I did hear someone.
Yeah, apologies.
I'm on my phone, but evidently I had to unmute the virtual session to get it to work. My name is Lance Lindholm. My wife and I live at 15310 East Castle Street. That's directly abutting the property in question on the south side. We've lived there for 25 years. Most of the concerns I'm echoing of my neighbors. We also directly would be affected by the extension of South Ridgehurst Circle south up into the development. Obviously, the hedgerows obviously comparable, not just single family, but comparable single family homes, and hopefully a buffer. But those have hopefully been addressed. But the remaining huge concern of ours is the extension of those two, what you call stub streets, into the neighborhood for all the reasons mentioned. And that is like the primary reason that we bought our home 25 years ago, and most of my neighbors and really like the area because there's no traffic. And that's not that particular street doesn't just affect us. It affects probably at least 20 homes in that neighborhood. That's no through street at this point, would become a very busy street. And so that's my main concern. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. One last time, is there anybody else virtually want to speak on this?
Good.
Go ahead.
Before we have the 2-minute rebuttal, could somebody from staff explain the emergency component to this meeting? I think people may have it confused, and I want to make sure that it's clarified.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Green. We were planning on doing that at some point. So the notifications that went out, when COVID hit in 2020, we had to change the bylaws for the Planning Commission meeting. The way they were currently written did not allow for a virtual component. They were only written for in-person meetings, and so we had to changed them and created a language that said in the event of emergencies, we were able to conduct the meeting with a virtual component. Staff and the Planning Commission are currently working on amending the bylaws again to include virtual as just a normal component of the meeting. But in order to stay legal and above board with our notifications, we have to technically advertise them as emergency meetings so that we can have the virtual component as part of our Planning Commission meetings and not just have them in person. The time frame for which notifications were sent to neighbors followed the same standard format, and whenever there's a 20-day notification time frame prior to the public hearing by which letters are mailed out and received by residents. It followed the standard format for all of our requirements based on state statute. This was not rushed in any way.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for letting me do that.
And if I could, before I start a rebuttal, I will just say I personally placed the notification signs out on the property that in the proper notification as per the staff rules and regulations. So I just wanted to make sure that that was on the record, that the signs did go up and in the proper place and time. So I think we've addressed many of the comments with the concessions that we provided earlier, and hopefully that is appreciated. As far as the traffic component, I don't think we have enough information right now to determine if it's fruitful or not to close off those streets. I mentioned earlier, I think good developments allow for connectivity. I think it's very likely that the neighborhood could benefit from connectivity through this property. Whether or not that happens or not, I'm not going to debate that now, but I just wanted to make sure we know that we're not addressing that in our PUD. As far as land values and properties, I think that's very subjective. I think it's unknown what type of properties we'll build over here on this side of the property line. I think it's very subjective to know what that is. I know that many homes these days, it's hard to build a house for $300,000. So I'm guessing a new home would exceed that in just generality. As far as the property being tranquil, I don't expect this to be an untranquil property in the future. It's certainly we've got that provisions for single family, like I mentioned, on the south and the west. There is a substantial amount of floodplain, like I've talked about, the floodway. As you note in the reserve, down those drainage ways, we haven't provided for zoning uses there. That's specifically left out, and that's in the PUD. So those areas should remain naturalized at this point. I think that answers most all of the issues that I saw. As far as multifamily, one of the things in the corner of the property, we've provided that provision like I talked about, but the multifamily would allow for townhouses. I think it'd be pretty cool to have some
Time, is that, do you need additional time? Or?
I maybe if I could just complete that thought, I think opportunity for other types of housing is warranted, and it makes for a good mixed use development when you have different types of housing. If it's not all one piece of vanilla, if you will, it gives you a lot of opportunities for people to move up and not have to move out of the neighborhood. So I think with that in mind, there's a good opportunity for that here.
Thank you. Any questions, Brian? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I'll bring it back to commission. What's the pleasure of the board? Mr. Warren?
Just to make sure I'm clear on the concessions that we would need to make a part of our motion would be 200 foot, single family homes within 200 foot of the west and south property lines of track 4, correct? And maintaining the hedgerow on all of the east,
West and south.
west and south property lines of just section 4 or 3 and 4.
My understanding, and Brian, you can correct me if I'm wrong, that the 200-foot buffer for single-family residential was along the west and the south of parcel 4, but also were adjacent to residential uses on other parcels. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point. The way I wrote what I read earlier, and of course it's going to be in the minutes, but it would be from, if you can see on the screen, it would be from this point here where there's existing single-family residential along this point to here, very northwest corner of parcel 4. That would be where we're talking about. And I did, in that narrative earlier, I did mention about the caveat for utility connections and street connections. So
That would be 200 foot, single family homes within 200 foot of those two lines.
that's correct.
And maintaining the hedgerow on those two lines.
That's correct. And, I think the important thing is that, the hedgerows do die from time to time. So we're going to maintain the ones that are living now and then trim up accordingly if there's some that are dying or things like that.
Well, and also the golf course use to be added
One last,
as a potential use.
One last thing, I think it's important to note that the
As a potential use to allow that.
Yeah, and I would have the golf course use on the entire PUD, not just one particular parcel. But I think it's important to note that on the single family that we're talking about preserving around the perimeter, I wouldn't want to, like if I bought a lot on that side of the hedgerow, I wouldn't want to be able to be limited on being able to trim up my hedgerow if it's got a bunch of debris in there. So I think it's important to note that, for the record, that, we're not saying you can't have, if you clear cut the hedgerow, then you have to reestablish it. So, I'm just saying that, people should be allowed to clean up the hedgerow.
So I would move to approve per staff comments and the modifications to the PUD that we just enumerated.
Motion by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Dool. Any discussion?
Chairman. J.R. Cox, Metropolitan Planning, again. I do want you to be aware that Mr. Joe Johnson has left the meeting and has not returned as of right now. So now there will be 10 members present if my count is correct. Thank you.
Anything else before we vote? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? 10-0. Our next item is item 4.8, zoning case 2022-00017.
Yes, before I get into this, I think if we just give a minute for the folks, if they wanted to clear the room just before we get into the discussion of this next item here.
Hey, Philip? Well, maybe I messed up.
And Mr. Chair, if I could, before we get started, I would like to see if either the applicant or agent for this item is online. I don't know if they've called in and we just can't recognize their name. But before we get into this, determine whether or not if there's an applicant or agent online. We have reached out to him prior to the meeting and we've actually called him during the meeting. Have not got an answer, but either Mr. Philip Rufo or anybody representing Mock Property Management, are you with us here at the meeting online? So I guess I will defer to the board on whether or not you want to proceed with this item or what the will of the board would be.
Got some discussion about that?
We have members of the public here who want to speak on this item. Is that correct?
Is there anybody here that want to speak on this
Yes.
item?
The difficulty of that is there's no applicant to rebut.
I guess I'd like to ask, with the applicant not here, we would prefer deferring it, I think. Would you guys like to speak today or would you like to come back?
Can we do that and just hold that for the record till the next meeting?
Law was going to comment, I think.
This is Jeff Anzan, Assistant City Attorney. The unfortunate part of allowing for public comment is the applicant does not have a chance to hear it, cannot rebut. Unless we have a particular way of getting them a copy of a transcript to address that, that's very difficult. I appreciate the individual's efforts and times to show up when the applicant does not. That's kind of a problem. We've run into this seemingly more frequently in recent times than in the past. And we're going to have to make sure we do that at the start of the meeting from now on to make sure we catch that. But that's my big concern.
The other thing is, if the applicant can continually not show up, we won't act on the, does it go away or does it stay in limbo?
I've never been associated with it where they miss more than once, but you can take no action on an item and they would at that point have to reapply. I believe I said it's kind of outside of what I've run into. I'd have to check on it.
Mr. Warren?
Jeff, can we hear public comment but defer any decisions to the next meeting and then just read their comments into the record?
You can. We've done that before. And last time that, in a previous case, we went ahead and voted on it. If it was in favor, if it was a negative vote, I would probably have been more concerned because of the ability to rebut. You can do it, but we just have to make sure before the next case is that the applicant has a copy of the transcript. Can we get that fast to read and go over, or maybe it can be summarized?
We at least can give them a draft copy because the next meeting they approve the minutes, but we at least can provide them the draft copy of what the public comment was.
It'd be my recommendation that we hear public comment but defer a decision until, and then we'll let the good folks that have come know what's going, if they want to come back and talk again.
If that's a motion, I'll second.
That is a motion.
I second.
Are we going to hear staff or just listen to what they have to say? That's where I think it's.
Phil, can you give us an abbreviated report?
Yes, sir.
I think there's still.
Can you repeat the motion? Are we
Motion was
going to let the people that came here today talk?
For any action, for any action, no action will be taken today.
Correct.
We won't comment either. Will we make comments?
I would say no. We've got some folks that have come to be heard. Let's give them the opportunities to give their say.
Do we have a vote on the motion?
I've got a message from Scott Wadle, who's online, who says the applicant may have just joined. Or that he should be calling in very soon. Is Philip Rufo here? Anybody with, oh, that might be him. Mr. Philip Rufo, can you hear us okay?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Very
Okay.
good. So I guess that's all right. I guess
Withdraw my
we'll,
motion.
I guess we'll start
Withdraw
over.
my second.
okay, so if it's okay with you guys, I'll proceed with the presentation of this case and we'll proceed as normal. Okay, Zone 2217 is an application rezone from single family to two family on a property located on the east side of West Fairmount Avenue, just north of 25th Street, as you can see on the screen. The interesting thing about this case is when this case was originally submitted, just the way the cycle was at that time, it did proceed to DAB prior to the Planning Commission meeting. At the DAB, a presentation was made. My understanding is that the DAB did not have a favorable recommendation for this case. The applicant chose to defer the Planning Commission meeting before it even came. And what he did is he provided a changed design of his duplex in response to the District Advisory Board meeting. So Planning Commission has not heard this case before. The District Advisory Board heard it once. It will also be going back to the District Advisory Board next Monday on July 11th. This is one of those cases where staff provided a suggested architectural design. Again, they were not requirements. My understanding of the District Advisory Board was not that they were going to require a different design. That their recommended action was that they wanted to deny the zone application altogether. That was their original recommendation. In response to that recommendation, the applicant provided, he changed the design. The design that you have in the packet is the one that was submitted, which brought it back to Planning Commission, so you have that to consider. Again, architectural design was not required by staff. It is now up to the Planning Commission to determine if they stay as suggestions, but the design that he submitted, when you look at the different factors of, number one, he took out a garage. There's no garage facade on the front. There's no garage at all. He provided a pedestrian scale entrance. There's more than 10% transparency on the front. There's variation in the roof design. There's siding materials and things like that the applicant is looking to conform to these principles, despite the fact that he technically is not required to do so. My understanding that this was his effort to potentially get a favorable recommendation for a zone change to duplex or two-family zoning. As you can see on the screen in front of you with the zoning, all the properties surrounding this location are single-family residential. History of this site. This property was platted in 1910. There have been no zoning actions on the case. If you're looking through historical aerials, there used to be a house on a considerable amount of time ago. I don't know exactly when it was removed, but the site is currently vacant. Conformance to the comprehensive plan, it identifies the site as appropriate for residential development. Staff finds it also in conformance with the Wichita Places for People plan, which strategy number 5 says to provide a diversity of housing options within the established central area. This area is identified as an area of stability, which says that it doesn't need quite as much investment. Obviously, building an additional home on this site will add to the stability of the location. This is also in the Northeast Heights Neighborhood Comprehensive Plan Amendment area. The policies of this plan, this proposed rezoning aligns with policy 1 that says it is recommended that the Planning Commission find that more intensive development is appropriate within the neighborhood. This specifically mentions that the most appropriate intensity is at the immediate corner of 21st and Oliver. However, the amendment emphasizes that these policies apply to the entire amendment area, which this area is included. Duplex and single-family developments are considered compatible uses in that there is instances of duplexes within single-family neighborhoods throughout the established central area. The Neighborhood Heights Neighborhood Comprehensive Plan, the land use map identifies a subject site appropriate for residential suburban development. A duplex development or a duplex on this is an example of residential suburban development. Staff recommendation is for approval. Again, architectural designs are just suggested from staff. The architectural designs changes that the applicant did were on his own accord. It was not related to a requirement of any kind. And we can go through the slides if you can go to the next one. As you can see, the site is currently vacant with single-family homes developed around it. There is an alley behind this property. The alley is unimproved and likely not necessarily accessible all the way down the alley, depending on the condition of it and whether or not people are utilizing it when they're not necessarily supposed to. Next picture. This is the land use map showing residential development. Next picture. This is the Neighborhood Heights area, and you can see this property is located up in here where its residential development is considered appropriate. Next picture. This is the floor plan of the proposed duplex that the applicant changed to. You can see that the front entrance is not too far set back from the front of the house, making it a lot more prominent towards the street in a pedestrian scale. What would have been potentially a garage up in the front has been changed over to a bedroom. So again, you have a much more pedestrian feel and not just a garage frontage on the front of the house. Instead of having the two things right next to each other to where you have a mass in the front, they broke it up by having the front door on one, the bedroom, and then the front door on the other, and a bedroom. So you actually have some variation versus having it just a mirror image. Next picture. This is the elevation of the front. You can see the front door with the gabled roof of the bedroom and windows, obviously repeated on the other part of the duplex. Again, a improved design versus having garage doors in front. You have a lot more transparency, which provides safety and eyes on the street. You have gabled roofs on the bedroom that help break up the mass of the roofing that's behind it. Next picture. And the side elevation. Next picture. This is looking at the site. It is a considerably small site. I believe it is a 50-foot wide, and this is usually where the struggle has come of how to provide duplexes on minimal-sized lots with like a 50-foot frontage. If some were driving down the street, they may not realize it's actually its own separate lot. Next picture. Looking to the house to the north. Next picture. That's to the south, my apologies. This is looking across the street to the south. Next picture. This is looking at the property to the north. Next picture. This is looking at the alleyway from 25th Street. And this is looking from 26th Street as well. So in a sense, there is potential access from the alley, but it's unimproved. It's not paved. There's not even wheel tracks. It's potentially just used more as a utility easement despite being technically public right-of-way as an alley. Next picture. And that might be it. I can stand for any questions.
The alley is public right of way, but it's they could put it on the back end, but how would they go about having that alley improved? Is it by petition?
They would work with the Public Works Department. Likely it would be a petition, but it may work like the street petition does if people want to pave streets of getting 51% of the property owners along it and getting it assessed to the properties.
Any other questions?
There's
Has there been any comment from the neighborhood concerning this project?
I believe we have individuals here from the neighborhood, who will provide comment later.
You clarify, the DAB saw this before the new design was presented, is
That
that
is correct.
correct?
They have not seen this design. Just with the cycle, because DAB meets once a month and Planning Commission meets twice a month. When it was originally supposed to come to the Planning Commission, it went to the District Advisory Board first, based on how the dates lined up. That was like the Monday before, and after the District Advisory Board meeting, the applicant chose to defer the case prior to the Planning Commission considering it.
And there's currently a requirement for off-street parking, one per
Right, and
unit?
off-street parking can be done on a driveway. So
So
they
the
could provide-
intent would be to be a driveway headed beside the
Yes, they would have to provide one off-street parking space per
unit.
And what did you say were the main complaints from the District Advisory Board?
My understanding, I did not present at the District Advisory Board, I was at a different one that night. My understanding is that their recommendation was for denial of the zone change together with my understanding would be that they didn't feel a duplex was an appropriate use. I don't necessarily know if it was based on design. I think their understanding was more of it just being a duplex, not being an appropriate use, given the single-family residential around it.
Philip, none of your drawings on this one showed how the setback from the front of the house to the street. Is there enough room for two cars to be in a single driveway, or is that just enough room for one?
Likely just enough room for one, considering how much depth of the lot he'll need to use for the structure. The setback in TF3 is 25 feet from the property line, and technically parking is not permitted within the setback. So if he's going to provide off-street parking outside of the setback, he's going to have to set the building back even farther in order to provide that parking space outside of the front setback.
Any other questions of staff? Williams,
If the lot's 50 foot wide, a parking spot is approximately 10 feet wide, you could get 5 parking spaces in front of that building.
He said that if it's 50 foot wide, you could get 5 parking spaces in front. Again, the stipulation in residential zoning is that parking is not permitted within the front setback. So as long as they have enough, if they set the building back far enough to provide parking outside of the front setback but in front of the building, they could provide additional parking spaces if they wanted to.
Well, and they will meet the minimum requirement for parking of one per unit.
That is correct.
And it appears as though there would be sufficient street parking too, if necessary.
Right, if there's additional people who need to park vehicles, they're just required to have one per unit.
Yeah, I know the aerial shows a couple of vehicles already parked on that street, so it's not like it'd be unusual.
Williams Bay, did you have a question?
No.
Answered.
Okay. Any other questions? Applicant or agent, please. Give us your name and address. You got 10 minutes.
This is Philip Rufo, 829 North Nims. Yeah, we provide off-street parking. I don't have a whole lot to add to this. So I'm just looking for approval to, this is a new design we want to try to utilize in other places too. But for right now, just looking to get that zone change and approval on this if that happens. So might be able to answer some other questions for you, but
Any questions of the Any questions, yeah? Seeing none. Anybody in the commission chambers want to speak on this item, please come forward, give us your name, address, and you've got 3 minutes.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Kenya Cox, and I currently live at 2745 North Fountain Street. My family has owned the home to the south of the property since the 1970s. And like the previous folks that testified, we were very surprised when the sign went up that said that they were going to rezone that. We knew that it was a possibility that they would put another home in there, And although that would be tight, we welcome that, but a duplex was something that we were definitely not expecting. So I'm asking that you do not approve the rezoning of this property. It is currently zoned as a single family, and I'm asking that you keep it that way. It's not just about the aesthetics or the design or the appearance. It's about helping us to maintain and support a family-friendly community that is very fragile. Our neighborhood is described as an area of stability in the people and places plan, but this has not always been the case. And what is not noted in the historical narrative from the staff is that it has taken nearly 2 decades of dedicated community involvement that has been led by our neighborhood association to push back on the illegal parking, blight, debris, and not to mention the illegal activities such as we had a drug house just 3 houses down, the house that is directly next door to us. We had so many calls from the police. We got the neighborhood together, we contacted the landlord, but that situation did not change until the occupant was actually stabbed to death 2 blocks away from there. So there's been a lot of instability in our community, but things have really changed. Just 4 doors down, which was a drug house, those folks got moved out. That home was flipped. Now new homeowners are there, and it's just really, really nice. We're just asking that you help us to maintain that homeowner occupancy. We have slowly, like I said, our ecosystem is fragile. I support the continuing development of our community, but by the building of a single-family home, not a duplex. I also ask that you help us we have been working, our goal is to preserve and protect and encourage more families to consider actually buying and, excuse me, something is flying here, and investing not just for today, but for tomorrow. And lastly, staff recommendation for the approval of the design, it just says it's a recommendation. It's not a requirement. And we are very nervous about even trusting the design of the, not just the design, but the developer, because of some of the situations that have happened in other communities with this. Yes, sir.
Your time's up. Do you have anything else?
No, sir. Just thank you very much for the opportunity to speak today and to hear our comments. Thank you.
I got a question, and you may not be able to answer it. Of all the residents in that neighborhood, you know how many are occupied by the owner and how many would be rental property?
I could probably sit here and count right there in that block, but I did go up and down the block and talk to everyone and, told them, what was going on. And many of them said that they would try to call in, but I know that they are working.
You have any idea how many?
I would say that we are predominantly now I'd say the majority is homeowners and not renters now.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
James Roseborough, 4518 Greenbrier, and I'm the president of the Northeast Heights Neighborhood Association. I want to concur with what Ms. Cox has presented before you, and I just want to say that in my neighborhood up there, individual home ownership is highly important to us. I learned something 2 months ago that I did not know till this zoning cases came up, that our neighborhood is slowly gone from single family, individually owned, to cooperation and bank owned. And just right down the street from where we're talking about here, it was a house that is small, that was somebody offered an enormous amount of money above what was asked for. And if we want to go on and keep our single family units intact and keep our young people and the senior citizen able to afford a place to live, we got to protect single-family units. And I do not see that space being made a duplex or better. If you haven't looked at that place, go look at the driveway in there. It's not big enough for two homes. I don't care if they're duplexes or whatever they are. We'd like to keep it as it is, single family. We look for development, but we want something that's going to be put there that our young people can afford in the future. Now, I do not know what this developer is proposing to do, but I'm assuming he's going to rent that house out, and he's going to make money off of it. And I don't think, we don't want that. If he put a single-family house in there and rent it, that's him. But a duplex and that, no. Keep our neighborhood in thought when you think about what you're going to do here today. We want to keep it single-family because we want to keep it that way, and we're encouraging people that's selling in that area to sell to families, not corporations and banks. Thank you. I'll answer any questions you have for me.
Any questions, Speaker?
Hi.
Mr. Roseborough, are there any duplexes that are successful in your neighborhood association? And I'm asking this question because this is a tough one for me. Love single family and home ownership, but I'm also seeing how the rising prices and the lack of available land is causing the home ownership to be out of reach for a lot of families, where a nice new duplex could be a great option for them to live in a lovely neighborhood at an affordable price. And of course, other multifamily aren't being built affordably and in affordable neighborhoods. So do you see any, do you have any experience with duplexes that have been successful?
Yes, we look at the one right on 26 and Hillside, just right up the street from it. I do believe that all those homes have been sold or been rented already. And that, so I could have to say that one is successful.
And what do you think makes for a successful rental property in an area where there's predominantly single family?
Well, number one, if we get landlords that's got rental properties, if they keep it up, if they keep up the properties, they wouldn't have a problem. I'm looking at one I'm working on now over on Lumen Street, not quite in my neighborhood, but the landlords just not forcing the tenants to keep the property up. And as Ms. Cox said before, if you see that, you get drug dealers, you get everybody coming into the neighborhood, and it's a good possibility that could happen in our neighborhood, and we have fought hard over the years to keep that out of it.
In my experience, a strong neighborhood association is what keeps the drug dealers out, because you will hold the landlord accountable. Could you see that happening if this were to be approved?
I don't foresee it happening because, number one, the landlord is not in our area.
Okay.
I heard where he came from, but I looked at this application. For some reason, I was looking at Andover or someplace where he was from. And if you have no interest in the neighborhood, I don't see where you'll keep the best interest of that neighborhood at heart.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for hearing me.
Is there anybody virtual want to speak on this item? Anybody virtual? Hearing none, the applicant's got 2 minutes of rebuttal. Two minutes, there you go.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't really have much of a rebuttal. I understand their concerns, and I mean, the owner of the property, I know will provide lawn care, and I know that the rents are going to be quite hefty over there. I mean, something that size goes for, geez, $1,300, $1,400 a month. So you, if you're worried about community, most kind of people that would be renting those have to have a 3 times multiplier on income to even be able to afford to live there to begin with. So I'm not always saying, you make more money, you're a better person. I'm just saying there's opportunity there to where the quality of tenant wouldn't quite be what they've expected in the past. That's kind of all I got there. Thanks.
Any questions, applicant?
Yes. Does the owner own multiple rentals in the community? And does the owner manage them himself or use a contracted company?
The answer to that is the owner uses a contracted company. He's actually spending millions of dollars on quite a few builds and these infill lots. So he's trying, if anything, to build up the community. And these structures are very nice. If you've had a chance to see them, that do go up, that we're putting up, and I know for a fact because I'm helping them rezone and build a bunch of other ones just to the west of Hillside. So that's what I can provide you on that.
You're the chair. How many square foot per unit are these duplexes?
I have to look on the prints real quick. Is there a way for me to, since these are new builds, I think there are over 1,200 per side, but I need to check.
I didn't see it on mine.
Adequate size though. Let's see. Does this not list the total square footage? Hang on, let me pull that. If you give me about 20 seconds, I can tell you exactly what that square footage is.
1260, is that it?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, thank you.
Did that answer your question?
Commissioner Fox, you're the chair.
Oh, what happened to? I would entertain a motion on this item.
Before we do a motion, I got a question. Actually, more of a comment. Staff, I don't know if it was on this particular one that said that looking at the drawings where you've got the fourth bedroom. Originally, that was had a garage.
Yes, the original design was the typical duplex design that we see where there's garages prominently out front and everything kind of tucked behind it.
And I do want to make a comment. I know that for a builder, this is very difficult to make a plan work that is more architecturally pleasing to the nature of the neighborhood. So I do appreciate that effort was made to make some adjustments to the design.
But the trade-off is now you've got a property that went from a 3-bedroom house to a 4-bedroom property, which means that if you've got teenagers, there ain't no way you got enough parking space. So I would, from a practical standpoint, a floor plan that's got 3 bedrooms, 2 bath, is going to fit a lot of families' need, and you might be able to get by without a garage. But if you got a 4-bedroom property and teenagers, now you've created a problem, that flips that. So I guess I want people to look at this and say, aesthetics is important, but it's not everything.
Well, but I think the design was a one-car garage, which in that event, one car's missing, or you can't see it, and one's behind it, and you play shuffle up less.
A one-car garage with a driveway for one car on a 3-bedroom situation would be, in my opinion, would be an improvement over what we've pushed this developer into. We said, we don't like that drawing, and so we're going to, change that into a 4-bedroom.
And the availability of 4-bedroom apartments is very small at this price point, especially. It's the larger families who can't find a place to live also. So
I had to throw that out. I looked at this and there's a trade-off. There's a trade-off for aesthetics, and it created a problem in my mind because I'm looking at this thinking this is too much house for the parking we've got available.
And now the real chairman's back, so I'll turn back to the real chairman. We're ready to call for a vote, probably, or a motion.
We'll have a motion.
I'm not going to vote on it because I missed part of it. I'm going to let you.
No. So I will again entertain a motion on this item.
I move that we approve per staff comment.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'll call for a vote. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
I have 1, 2,
Roll call.
3.
I think
Do
if
we
we,
want to, 4,
we'll do a
roll call?
here.
Roll call.
Okay, we need roll call for this vote.
Mr. Bill Johnson.
Abstains.
Ms. Fox.
No.
Mr. Green.
Yes.
Mr. Dool.
No.
Mr. Nix. Ms. Foster.
Yes.
Mr. Warren.
Yes.
Mr. Hartman. He's a no. Ms. Cunningham.
No.
And Mr. Williams Bay.
No.
So the motion fails with 3 yeses and 6 nos.
We call for a positive motion, so I call for a new motion, please. Can I make that on behalf of the? Can I make a motion on behalf of, I move to disapprove the zoning request for a change from from single family to TF3?
And I'll just go ahead and call a roll call again if that's.
Okay, and can I have a second, though, for that motion?
Second.
Second from Mr. Hartman. Now roll call vote on a motion to disprove the zoning change.
Mr. Bill Johnson. Ms. Fox.
Yay.
What, I guess I'm confused. The motion.
Failed.
Yeah, so.
The
so
motion
then
failed,
The
so
zoning, the
it
zoning
wasn't-
won't change. The zoning will remain.
Right.
As,
Basically, we're going through the exercise to put it on the record to have a motion to deny and have a positive vote for denial. So it's effectively the same, but at least goes on the record.
Follow the same thing.
Is it well, I think we've done it in the past, so is it necessary? Legal counsel, can you?
You can do that.
Is it necessary?
It's not necessary, but you can do it if you want to make it clear on the record.
well, we're in the middle of the vote.
We're in the middle of the vote.
Yeah,
so-
we're in the middle of the vote.
So Ms. Fox was so with an affirmative vote, you're affirming a denial recommendation. Mr. Bill Johnson is an abstention. Ms. Fox.
I'm affirming a denial.
Yes. Mr. Green.
No.
Yeah. Mr. Dool.
I vote yes, but I don't understand why we're doing this.
Yeah.
Mr. Nix. Ms. Foster.
No.
Mr. Warren.
No.
Mr. Hartman. Ms. Cunningham.
Yes.
Mr. Williams Bay.
I'm confused. Yeah.
Because we had a negative motion, when we state the motion as a denial and then get positive, then we get a majority vote for the denial, it's clearer on the record that we denied the motion for zoning.
Denial
Vote
again.
yes, you're saying you don't want the zone change.
I'm just gonna say part of that time, that last deal is confusing, which I
And I
don't think
thought it
it
was-
helps out doing the second one because
See
you
why we
vote
should've-
yes for a denial. It don't make sense.
So it's
Anyway, it's been denied twice.
Motion passes 6-3-1.
All right.
And for the record, the the neighborhood would welcome a single-family home on that property for sale to an owner or rental.
Okay, next item is a non-public hearing item, 5.1, 2022-00004. Philip, go ahead on it.
Yes. This is a request to determine whether or not an applicant can resubmit an application within a year, so after 6 months, but prior to a year, since they received a denial recommendation from City Council. This is related to a zone case that was Zone 2022-08, which was a request to rezone a property from single-family SF5 to MH manufactured housing. If you want to go to the aerial, it's an existing manufactured home park, but it's in non-conforming status, which means if homes are taken off the property, they are not allowed to put any back on. The City Council, when this came before the Planning Commission voted approval on a consent vote. With this, it went to the District Advisory Board. The District Advisory Board recommended denial. Ultimately, the City Council recommended, their final action was to deny the zone change. The Unified Zoning Code says that an applicant either has to wait a year from the public hearing date, which was the Planning Commission date, to reapply for the same application, or if there's stipulations, there are stipulations that could cause them to request from the Planning Commission to resubmit an application after 6 months, but prior to the year termination point. The applicant provided a narrative in the staff report that I sent you earlier this week. Again, I apologize, it was not included in your original packet. But in that, he explains that the property is over 9 acres. The new application would apply only to the north 4.5 acres that is currently developed. In addition, they would put in a protective overlay that restricts it to the north 4.5 acres. It would restrict the total number of manufactured homes on the site to 18. And any manufactured home placed on the site after the zone change takes into effect would have to be manufactured after 2015. There are, as the zoning code states, the 3 listed criteria that have to be evaluated are if significant physical, economic, or land use changes have taken place in the immediate vicinity since the recent denial, which in this case there hasn't, nothing has changed that would cause that. Whether or not a significant zoning regulation text change has been adopted, there has not been a significant zone change or regulation that has been adopted. Or the application is for a more restrictive change in zoning classification or is significantly different. This is where staff's analysis goes a little bit more in depth. Staff's analysis is that though they're requesting manufactured home zoning, which is what the original request was before, the addition of the protective overlay makes it more restrictive and significantly alters what the original request was. The original request would allow the 9-acre parcel to be developed with manufactured homes, up to 72 total manufactured homes on that 9-acre parcel. By restricting it to the north 4.5 acres and the existing 18 pads, that's a 75% reduction in the number of homes that could be placed on the site. In addition, it is more restrictive because it restricts what type of home can be placed on there based on the manufacturing standards that they would place in their protective overlay. With that, staff is recommending that their request to allow a reapplication after 6 months be approved, based on our opinion that it is a significantly different application and it is a more restrictive zoning, as we just previously discussed. And I can stand for any questions.
This would be, if we approve that, then we start square one, go through the process again, all the notifications.
Yep, they would submit an application to the planning department at or after the 6-month period of time from when the original planning commission heard it. We'll notify all the neighbors again. It'll come before planning commission. We'll do a presentation. It'll go to district advisory board, so on and so forth.
Any other questions, staff?
So does this mean that we're actually considering this a different case because the specifics of it are different, and that's the justification for coming back in less than a year?
Yes, it will be considered a different case. It will be given a different case number because the details of the application will be different.
Right.
Hey, Philip, thank you. Agent?
Sorry, what was the DAB's big resistance to this originally? Do you
Well, it actually went to the DAB twice because the applicant requested a second hearing. Initially, they were concerned of future progress of Kellogg Drive and whether or not it would impede, if they allow homes to be placed, then it would be harder for them to remove homes if Kellogg Drive was installed. There was concern over the appearance and the way in which the property has been kept. There's been significant concern of whether or not the DAB actually is thinking of the correct manufactured home park in the area. But they're concerned about the upkeep and management of it, in addition to allowing additional homes to be put in if it would be harder to make infrastructure improvements in the future versus those homes are currently not there.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Greg Ferris. I reside at 144 South Bay Country Court in Wichita. I was not involved in the original application on this. I was brought in quite late in the process, evaluated. There were several mistakes made, I thought, by the applicant, who happens to be my client, but he made some mistakes. And when he contacted me and I looked at it, I said, well, you know, there's some mistakes. We should do this differently. So I believe that staff has outlined why we meet the criteria to go back in 6 months. It will still be the same process. It'll be a brand new case. Still have to go to DAB. This time I will go to DAB. I think I can explain to DAB the difference in what they're thinking is the process and what actually is. There's a mobile home park directly east of this that has had considerable issues. They've had shootings. The DAB cited shootings at this park. There have never been any. So there was a lot of confusion. Again, the agent was from out of town, or the applicant was from out of town, did not have a local agent, made some missteps. And, you know, we just think that by tightening this up, shortening the amount of land that we're going to use, and bringing in new homes instead of what in their mind were some older homes, we can present this in a different light. But regardless of that, that's kind of the new case. Doesn't really matter. All that matters is whether or not we met the criteria to meet the 6 months. Staff, we agree with their findings. I'm not going to take a lot of time. You guys had a long day. Be glad to answer any questions.
Any questions, Speaker? Thank you. You got some time and a half today.
Pardon me?
You got some time and a half today.
I did.
Okay, bring it back to board.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve the request and let the applicant know that we can hear this case no earlier than September 3rd.
Second?
Motion by Mr. Green, second by Mr. Warren. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Anybody opposed? Okay, we got one other item off the agenda.
I apologize that she is not here, but we have a new staff member to introduce. Her name is Erin Ebach-Friend. She started 2 weeks ago. We're excited to have her on board as part of current plans, so you can look forward to hearing presentations from her. We're excited to have more staff on board to disperse some of this amount of work that we've been having to process. But we're excited for her to be on board. We look forward to working with her and getting her up to speed.
Give her a controversial one to begin with, that way.
You think that's too much paper for one meeting? Jeez.
Is there any other business? Nope. We're adjourned.